going to come in live and direct, and we got a special premiere that we're doing today. You guys have been asking for a Q&A, and this is the very first Q&A that Toko is being a part of. So I'm going to let Toko take over from here.
All right, boys and girls. So you guys asked for it by popular demand, so here it is. And what we're basically going to do is Flacco sent the link to most of you guys, and we're going to go through your questions, as best as we can. We're going to try to get to everybody, but there's a lot, and we're going to do this. You ready?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1 comes from Mr. Creepin' on a Come Up. Questions for both of us. Do you think if the North allowed residents like the South, would it be beneficial or detrimental to the ends numbers? Northern and Southern residents are two different things, and I would like to hear your guys' input on this. Hope my question makes sense. Ha, ha, ha.
I get what he says, man. A resident is basically still a Sureño. That's what people don't realize.
Yeah.
When I hear this question, the first thing I think of is how everything was pre and our dismantling. How the Red Norteños just did their time. They had limited expectations. Wear your boots, stay up all day, walk in twos. But there wasn't a lot of expectations, so forth, man. I don't think it would hurt the numbers. I think it would actually help the numbers because it would have less people wanting to walk away. You know what I mean? The more you try to, the more policies and discipline and procedures you enforce upon your people, the more they feel like they're being controlled. And nobody likes to be controlled, So I think there'd be a lot more. I don't think it would affect the numbers because even though the South Side of residents, they still have to get off. If it's time of war, they're still going to get busy. So that's just my personal perspective of that question. I understand exactly what you're saying. If you were in prison before 97, then you would understand exactly what I'm saying. You had a lot of homeboys, OGs that were in their 40s and 50s that were still active at that time. They weren't involved in politics, but when it came to getting busy, they were there.
Yeah, and I guess my answer to that question would be the same thing. I'm old school from the early 90s, and before 97, you know what I mean? If you were, we didn't call them residents, but or even Northerners, they were just homies. You know what I mean? They're just regular homies that didn't politic. You know what I mean? But they were able to do their time, but they knew that if anything were to pop off, they had to get off. But they were more adept to do that because there was no pressure. There was no obligation. You know what I mean? There was a lot of privileged information. If you were striving, if you were trying to become somebody, you had to pretty much raise your hand back in those days. You know what I mean? Or catch the attention of a structure NR member, or if there was lucky to be a C that was on the main line with you at those times. Again, we're talking early 90s, before the implementation of validation and before they started getting strict on that. There was people out there that were undercover. Flacco's talked about that a lot. But I noticed the carnalismo back then with regular, there were, not to piggyback so much off what Flacco said, but in my experience, most of the dudes that were my age now back then, when I was just a 19-year-old, man, I thought that they were hooked up just by the way they conducted and carried themselves, but they were not politicians. They were just Norteños, wherever they were from. And, they just, they did what they had to do. You know what I mean? So I don't think it would hurt the numbers, you know what I mean? But I think it would make a difference in the level of loyalty, you know what I mean, that people would have, I guess, towards the cause. Good question. That's a good question. All right, so question number 2 is also from Creeping on a Come Up. It's for both of us. Why do you think nowadays homies look at independent ends as less than homies who are from an actual hood? Back in the 90s and 2000s, I feel like independent Northerners were embraced the same way as everyone from hoods. Times have changed. What's your 2 inputs?
I've never really experienced or seen that. I mean, an independent end is just as worthy as any other end. You know what I mean? Personally, some people thrive up on the glorification of hoods that are kind of recognized, like say San Jose, for instance, Horseshoe, Palmas, Capitol Park. These are all V&H. These are all well-known hoods, well-established hoods that have generations and generations. So when you get pulled into one of those hoods and get jumped in, a lot of times people glorify it, or sometimes people look up to those people. I mean, you got to remember, I'm from a small town, so I always had to go to the county jail and juvenile hall in Santa Clara County, which was nothing but dudes from San Jose. So it never really affected me as an individual, man. I never really put too much on where you were from or who you were. I wanted to know how you got down and how your activities were. That's all that mattered to me.
Well, speaking from experience, that's what I was. You know what I mean? A lot of people that know me personally know I was not from any specific hood. You know, I lived in between where Palmas, Capitol Park, and I guess East Side hoods were back in those days over on the East Side. And my whole cul-de-sac where I lived, we were all homeboys, but we didn't have a barrio. We weren't going to make one up. We got along with everybody we went to. You know, going to Independence High School, man, it was a melting pot of a lot of homeboys that were there. You know what I mean? And back in those days, man, we all got along. You know, everybody knew me as, you know, as who I was, and homeboy Casper and everybody else that was from a little area where we're at. And we weren't pressured to join a specific. You know what I mean? A matter of fact, a lot of those homeboys just said, shit, man, you know, you get along with everybody. Don't get involved with this bullshit, especially when the little wars would happen. You know what I mean? So I never felt any disrespect or any disregard just because, you know, I was an independent Norteño. You know, I don't think it affects nowadays. I can't speak for nowadays because I'm not out there anymore. But obviously things have changed, and my opinion is still the same on that. You know what I mean? You should be treated equal. If you're representing, you're representing. You know, unless something contradicts that in your paperwork, and when you get to where you need to get to, then take issue. But then again, I'm speaking old school from the way the rules and regulations were back then. So that's my opinion on that. Spencer, but
he caught my cough.
Yeah. Flacco said, you don't smoke, you're going to start 25% cigarettes, 25% coffee goes to the household, even as inactives. That's his rules. Fuck, there I go, see? All right. All right, this is the second one you sent me. Creeping on to come up again. Question is for me. Did you ever have to get off against any of the Usos when they were funking with the homies in the 90s? And the question for Flacco, being from a small town, did you get along better with other homies from the small towns, being that you both had that in common?
You know what? That didn't really play any factor in anything. I got along with homeboys from all kinds of different areas. Like sometimes I would be cool with certain homeboys that were from big hoods, sometimes small towns. I judged everybody individually. You know what I'm saying? And but sometimes, yeah, like I would cater more to the homeboys that are from the small towns sometimes, or from small barrios, because they're with that action sometimes more. See, there was a lot of dudes that were from bigger hoods that maybe, and the hoods in San Jose per generation, guys, so are not that deep as people think in San Jose. They're like maybe anywhere from 30 to 50 in a generation. Am I right, Toko? Yeah, there's no hood that has like 300, 400 heads in one generation. Nah, it doesn't happen like that. There's no subsets or anything. But there was dudes that got into certain hoods that like they hid behind their hood. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and so I never kind of respected those dudes that hid behind it, or like say if there was something kicking off in juvenile hall, ranch, or prison, and they kind of cowardly found the shadows so they didn't have to get involved. That stuff happened. You know, but still though, there was good dudes from everywhere, man. I could tell you of cities that you never heard of. I've met people from San Martin, you know what I'm saying? San Lucas, right? Which is all the way South County in Monterey. Towns like you never even heard of or thought there would be homeboys. And they were good dudes. You know what I mean? From big barrios and big towns as well. And I've met people from small towns that were just straight weenies or straight, not the type of crowd that I'd want to associate with. So it's not about where you're from, it's who you are. I'm going to repeat that. It's not where you're from, it's who you are.
Absolutely. And so for me, since we're on that question, I feel the same way. You know what I mean? Everybody that I've gotten close with, you know, it's no secret, San Jose's so big, you know, most of my closest camaradas and guys that I took to, you know, both when I was active and not, man, come from small towns. Salinas, Greenfield, Watson, you know what I mean? Merced, Modesto, you know, Olivas, towns I never heard of until I went to the joint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But those were some of the dudes with the business. They were most educated. And, you know what I mean? If I was, you know, and it was a blessing and it was a curse at the same time. You know what I mean? Because criminal minds think alike. But it's just like Flacco said, man. It's not about where you're from. It's who you are. You know, because everybody knows once you go inside the joint, doesn't matter how many killings you got, doesn't matter how many stabbings, how much dope you sold, you're amongst everybody else, man. That's with the business and that's participating. And you're either gonna fall in line, or you're gonna be who you think you are on the street, and you're gonna get put in your place really, really quick. You know, I got some stories about a lot of dudes, man, that had good reputations out there, but came to the joint, and they were tough. They were with the business, but they didn't last long, and they ended up no good because they wouldn't fall in line, because they thought that who they were, you know, out there outmatched the cause that we were doing inside there. They could have easily just been homies, but they decided to go, as they used to say back then, against the grain. And when you do that, especially back in the early '90s, man, you were done. Whether you're Norteño, whether you were anybody else, that was the one thing that was forbidden to talk about. When you go against the grain or you disagree with something and you make it known and you're vocal about it, especially in the early '90s, you know, you were done. There was no research and investigation. There was no talking about it, man. If you were poison and they called it propaganda, this dude's got to go, you know. And that's how I felt about that. And for the second part of that question, did I get into with any of the Usos when they were funking in the early '90s or in the '90s? No, I did not. You know, once I started doing time when I was a juvenile, and I made my choices when I was in juvenile and the boys ranch and coming in and out, that I was a homeboy, but I was a Toko Uso, being Tongan and Samoan. You know, I met a lot of those dudes that were in there from SOS. Not so many Tongans back then, you know what I mean? But a lot of more Samoans. You know, it was a little bit different, you know what I mean? Who I was, but if anything, man, it crossed those barriers to where we're allies. They still looked at me as family and I did as them. Never had any issues. You know, the only issues I ever did have sometimes was walking down the street and some youngsters would hit me up, but there'd always be an OG with them. Once I established my reputation, be like, hey, that's the homeboy. He's no blood. You know what I mean? He's this, that, and the other. And right after that, it was buying drinks and kicking back. Hey, come to 4th Street, man. Hey, we're sorry about what happened. It was all love. You know what I mean? So, yeah, never any issues like that. Good questions. All right. This question's for both of us. The whole state and Fed issue caused a big division within the northern. With the northern. I'm just reading it how you guys wrote it. Do you think they'll become two factions? I noticed the state and Fed northern carry themselves differently, but don't interact with each other.
No, I think that they probably still interact on some level. Mm-hmm. No, at first I thought that could potentially happen. You know what I mean? It depends what happens now with Operation Quiet Storm and the reaction to those guys going into the feds. You know what I mean? If any of them start to get moved on, then they may have to start separating. You know, I think anything's comparable. You know what I'm saying? There's no one trying to just restart or restructure any type of whole new organization. It's still 1-0. Is there some indifferences? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But the same token too, man, I mean, you got some there in the state. The state needs to take care of themselves. You got some of the feds that need to take care of themselves. If you can have a working relationship, so be it. But if you can't, let everybody operate independently, because you want to have less people involved anyways. That's the only way you can secure and safeguard yourself. If you want to open up everything between the state and the feds and communications and so forth, you know, it can lead to a whole lot more people getting indicted. That's just my personal perspective, my personal opinion. I think that the state feds should be able to establish their own type of, you know, areas and have their own crews go out there, even if they're working parallel, because it's like in San Jose, you'd have like about 7 regiments out there. And only when there was a major issue would they get in contact with each other. You know, and then how they should work is whoever has seniority, Whoever has highest grade and rank basically would have that area. And if there's an issue that they have to assist the feds or states on, so be it. Then you alleviate all the bullshit. Because everybody wants to eat. Everybody wants to make money. You know? And so what you got with the whole situation is you got people pulling people who are not supposed to be affiliated with this into their problems. Which we've always been taught before, like, oh biz is oh biz. You know? But that's just my whole perspective, man. I think it'll be worked out.
I don't usually like to touch on current events, but I mean, it's just an open-ended question.
Yeah.
So I think I wish no ill will, first off, towards either faction. I understand both plights, you know what I mean? And Flacco and I talked offline about, you know, if things were different and we were still active, where I'd be. I'm from the early 90s, and a lot of the guys I know that, you know, from both sides, like I said, I understand it. You know, it's a big mess, but, you know, the NF has been around longer than I've been alive, you know what I mean? And they found a way to work things out, and they have to deal with each other on some form or fashion in order to get some type of understanding group, especially now with current events that are going on. So I think time will tell.
Yeah,
you know, that's all I can say. Time will tell. We've been surprised so far, you know, and I've been out of the game. You know, I mean, I was never a C. I was at a lower level just as a structure and arm member, but privy to certain information just based on my personal relationships. You know what I mean? And I just think time will tell when it comes to all that. So, good question. Weddle's World wants to know, Toko, were you an addict? What was your vice? How did you overcome? Now that you're no longer active, do you still feel a pull to the fellas, or do you drift towards your heritage roots?
That's for you, bro. That's for you, basically.
That's for me. The second part is for Flacco. Flacco, I'd like to see you bring a new format and somewhat along the lines of Real Talk with Flacco Friday night specials. Guest is subscriber blah blah blah, went through blah blah blah, overcome obstacles, and now does. You get what I'm saying? Kind of get in tune with the subscribers, give some negative past and shed on the positive future, bro. You got a lot of subscribers with very, 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 very interesting comments. Shit, man, it would be cool to hear their stories, even if you got to blur some of it out. Much respect to both of you.
You know, we were having those articles written for a minute, and I've always opened open invitation for people who may want to jump on and tell their story. You know what I'm saying? That's up to them if they want to tap in. I have a tendency to want to find those, you know, next breaking interviewers. You know what I mean? Like, look, I found Toko, I found Gunner. You know what I'm saying? I found all kinds of people. I pulled them into the wing to interview them, and that was the mentality I used to have. And so, for me to get interviews, it usually has to be someone that's, you know what I'm saying, that's going to have that major story that needs to be told and something new that's groundbreaking and that's going to be inspirational. At the same time, it's going to have some truth to it. So I'm working on a couple things as we speak, some interviews that I should be sharing pretty soon, though. But right now, I'm going with the flow. I mean, right now, I'm trying to build the channel up. I'm a little bit over 8,000 subscribers. The views are okay. They're off and on. The lives haven't really been too good. But in time, you know, we'll see where we go. The more success this channel has, it's the more I can do. Otherwise, I'm dropping 2-3 videos just to stay afloat sometimes. You know what I mean? So we'll see where we go.
All right, and to answer the question, yeah, I had a problem, you know, definitely with drinking and playing around with different drugs. You know what I mean? And my vice was, I would say it was more the drinking than, you know what I mean, than the drugs. I turned to that a lot because it was accessible. You know, I prided myself on my discipline and not putting myself in a situation where I was going to get caught up for any drug cases or anything else like that. You know what I mean? I didn't chase any bags, but I knew enough men and women that respected me enough. And I knew where to go if I needed to get anything, you know, and that was usually behind some of the stuff that was happening when I was on the streets. You know what I mean? you can only hide your feelings as a human being and as a man or a soldado, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? My people in society and law enforcement, district attorneys, and all these experts and people that go to school look at guys like me and Flacco and everybody else as monsters for the stuff that we participate in, a detriment to the race and this and that. But we were just part of a machine that was forever turning. You know what I mean? And we had our spokes that were on that machine for a while until, like anything else, you got to change the wheels and upgrade. You know what I mean? And sometimes you go along and sometimes you don't. But all that stuff that you do, the kicking down the doors and putting hands on, you know what I mean? Just stuff that you can't.
Broomsticks.
I won't get into. What's that?
Broomsticks.
Yeah, broomsticks. You know, pistol whips and sometimes, you know, things get twisted and turned up. You know what I mean? And those are when the lines of the cause for me got blurred, and I would turn to drinking. You know, I'd stay out for 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? I didn't tweak. You know, I did coke. So I guess I didn't really have a vice. I didn't have anything I turned to. And it wasn't daily. But when I did do it, I made a conscious decision to do it. And I would tell people, hey, I'm going to be gonzo for 48 to 72 hours. And I'd call up who I needed to call. You know, there was always a couple of girls that, you know what I mean? That's the way that I saw it. And that's the only
that was a trigger, right?
That was a trigger. You know what I mean? And just like I said, okay, a quick example is, you know, I mean, if I was doing stuff with Flacco in the regiment, just as generally speaking, to give you guys an idea, we'd have to go do something. He'd get a directive, he'd call who he needed to call. It'd be me and maybe one other guy or him, and we'd have to go do something, and we have to go do something hard, hitting, and fast in order to make quota or whatever the directives came down. Hey, I was there. And if we didn't get locked up and we got away and everything went according to plan, you shake hands, you hug. All right. Be in touch. Be safe. Follow the orders. Follow whatever's got to do. All right. Now you're just back out there walking around everybody else with your head in the clouds. What the fuck just happened? You know, and it was times like that I couldn't come home. You know what I mean? I couldn't do the things that I had to do. So I always knew there was always a couple people I had in my pocket. Excuse me, that I could go to. They didn't ask no questions. They were always there. And it was, in my eyes back then, it was a safe place for me to be. And to this day, it's never jumped up and bit me in the ass. But, you know, that's how I did things when it came to my addiction. And now you're asking as far as, do I push now that I'm not involved, you know, do I still feel a pull towards the fellas or to my heritage and to my roots? It was active or not active. It was always to both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, you know, there was an OG Samoan from Compton that told me, he goes, you're always going to be Tongan and you're always going to be Samoan. But this is who Toko is in his heart. This is what you represent outside of that. Then you're always going to be that. And any part of your heritage, any of your people, your true people, are going to respect that. Just like there'll be Tongans and Samoans that join the U.S. military or become cops or become lawyers or doctors or whatever, doesn't mean that they're not Tongan or not Samoan. It just means that that's who they are. That's what they chose to be. And, you know, to me, it was like I got the best of 3 worlds, the Raza, the Toko, and the Uso part of it. You know what I mean? I've never denounced where I'm from, and I don't feel a pull towards either, I don't want to say faction, but towards either one. You know, it's the same. You know, yeah, I'm more privy to the fellas because that's my background. You know what I mean? And if these guys want help, you know what I mean, then I'm willing to help them do something positive. You know what I mean? And the same thing goes for my people. There's plenty of these guys. Just because the lines are what they are doesn't mean, you know, that I lost my humanity. That was the biggest thing for me in leaving that life, was I was a human being and I still conduct and carry myself that way. Everything else I let go. So hope that answers the question. On to the next, as Flacco would say. Toko, you being Polynesian, how would you explain to young men that gangs is not the right way, but come from a cultural background of society of warriors? What can we tell them the difference, what they're fighting back for 100 years ago and what they think they're fighting for now, having a warrior mindset? Me, Native American, it's a problem on and off reservations and into urban communities. Older men mention that we can still be warriors through the military, but young men never choose that route.
Mm. Good, Toko. That's all you.
Yeah.
You wanted to be in the military, right?
Yeah. I wanted to be in the military, man, but the fates wielded the clouds one way, and I ended up, catching the case. That was the story when I had my oldest son, and her mother lived in Gilroy. And when I got my case on the way back, when he was just a couple months old, that changed everything. I was on my way to being recruited. I was going to join the Marines or the Army. I could have my choice of either one. And I was just waiting to turn 18, in about a year. And unfortunately, protecting myself and taking care of business and representing on the streets, man, became, I don't want to say important, but it just came down to that. It came down to that night. Over on Capitol Expressway, and it changed my whole life. And then I took that warrior mentality because I was gun ho about going in the military, because I consider myself pretty intelligent and pretty sophisticated when it comes to, Toko, I need you to read this, study it, let me know what you think in a couple of days. I'm going to ask you about it. And that's what I did with a lot of those pamphlets. That's what I did with a lot of the stuff that I did prior to being, what I ended up being when I was in the joint. And I was for it. I did all the research. I did everything. You know what I mean? I was going to try to provide a future for who I thought was going to end up being my wife, my first son's mom, and for myself, and get out of San Jose. That's the honest to God truth. You know what I mean? I wanted to be a warrior. I wanted to represent, the Polynesian culture, much like Native American, much like the Aztecs and the Mayans. Everybody has their guerra. Everybody has their warriors. All that stuff and the ancestry and the struggle and land being taken, islands were being taken, the war with Hawaii, which a lot of people, I don't want to get into all that. But what I would tell the youngsters now is that if you pride yourself, whether you're Native American, Inca Indian, or Aztec, or you're Mexicano and you got native roots, or if you're Polynesian, Maori, and you're tied to the islands, in any way, if you respect that culture, but you find yourself on the fence, you got to ask yourself now, what's more important? I can't push somebody either way, you know what I mean? Because I think that'd be a disservice to sit there and say,
yeah,
I don't know the reasons why men and women join the gangs, whether they're native or whatever, all the problems that are happening in urban America, I only know what's going on in my backyard. But if I had a chance to speak to them, the one thing I would do that nobody ever did for me in those situations was listen.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Problems were on the reservations and outside the reservations. Listen to what the problems are going on in Mexico or, in the barrios, because just because you're in LA doesn't mean all the problems, are the same. Every barrio has a different thing. Every man, woman has a different reason why they do what they do, and a lot of them want to reach out for the help. I truly believe that. I believe 90% of them do, whether they want to admit it or not. But they just
believe that too.
And nobody listens. They want to dictate. And that's not what I would do. So that would be the first and only thing that I would do is listen and say, what do you want to do? What's it doing for you? And just get to know them. They got kids, and then it might sound like manipulation tactics, but it's not. How can I help somebody if I don't know them? They could be willing, but I got to have some type of background in order for me to, extend the best and be responsible. You know what I mean? And that's basically what I would say. Good question. Mountain Mike wants to know, Flacco and Toko, what are your favorite old school and oldie songs, memories to any of them?
Okay, this is going to be our last question. We're going to be doing a part 2 to this, guys, too. So we're going to answer this one. We're about halfway through. We're almost halfway.
Yeah, we're about halfway. Yep.
So we're going to do a part 2 probably like in 4 or 5 days. We'll be dropping the part 2. So my favorite oldie songs, man, were Marvin Gaye, of course, like My Mistake and stuff like that. Or I got tattooed on me, What You See Is What You Get. You know what I'm saying? Just a lot of memories, man. Listening to oldies, like going barbecuing, cruising down Santa Clara Street, King Road. Every oldie song, man, was rocking back then, man. I mean, the OJs, the Ten Priests, the Mad Lads, Brentwood, War. I can go on and on, man. There's just so many oldie songs. I mean, that was the way of life. We didn't really listen to rap too much back then. A little bit of Dre when Dre came out with Snoop. People were bumping that, Eazy-E, of course, and stuff. You know what I mean? The Bay Area rap scene wasn't out there yet, though, except for Too Short, a little bit of E40. So oldies was the way of life. I just remember cruising down Santa Clara Street or King Road in my Regal Slammed, right? Just bumping the music, man. Pulling over, start drinking Pisto, macking on females. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was wild. I was off the hook back then, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, just be. I was off the fucking chain, man. But I remember, like, before you going out cruising, man, have your clothes perfectly creased. You know what I mean? Your paño, have that in your left pocket, of course. You know what I mean? If I'm wearing a hairnet for the night, I'm wearing a hairnet. You know what I'm saying? If not, if I'm wearing a paño across my head, I'm wearing a paño. I mean, beanie caps, whatever. I mean, Fridays and Saturdays, people live for those. Cinco de Mayo, Boulevard nights. Those are the times were like the best times of my life as a kid, when it wasn't always about fighting, man, but it was about meeting homeboys, getting drunk, like, you know what I mean? Picking up on females. And then maybe at the end of the night, we get in a fight. We'd be in my homeboy 63 Bel Air cruising it, you know what I mean? And sometimes they'd want me to drive and shit. I'd be fucking up right in front of the cops and shit, you know what I mean? Shit like that would happen back then, man. But like I told people before, we should do this. We should go out early, around like 8, 9 o'clock. It gets dark in San Jose. Start cruising, you know what I mean? Doing our thing. And as soon as the cops come out, they start putting out the cones. Either we go to King Road from there and start cruising down King Road, you know what I mean? Make a turn at the 7-Eleven, or we go to a house and go drink up from there, right? Around 3 o'clock, we would decide to go back out there. And the reason why, what we were doing was we were looking for what we call stragglers. What the stragglers were like either the out-of-town females or the females that were deciding, like, they were cruising all night and they kept on bypassing dudes, right? Because they wanted to go out there and have fun and still drive. Now they're looking for someone to hook up with. So we go out there by 3 o'clock in the morning and see what we can knock down real quick. So, I mean, I have so many memories, man. Like San Antonio King, we got into a big old melee right there, fucking Pokeway. You know what I mean? We got right there in that parking lot right there, got a big old melee. Santa Clara Street, back in days, I don't know if everybody remembers this, when the Sureños tried to rush downtown. I mean, I was right there with the homeboys, man. One of my homeboys got arrested that day. All kinds of different events. The one time we kicked it off with the cops when they pepper sprayed my homeboy Victor, the cops, everybody started throwing bottles. You know what I mean? And then we ended up going to someone's yard, you know what I mean? They helped him out. Just so many memories, man. And like, we used to jump from car to car. Like, see, I could be in a homeboy's car, Toko's driving, and I'm picking up on these females over there. I'm the type of dude that gets out the car with my beer in the hand. I open the door and I get in the car with the females. And I'll be like, I'll see you guys later. You know what I mean? Fun times, man. Fun times.
Yeah. I guess for me, I listened to both. In the beginning when I was younger, before I went to the joint, there was a lot of oldies. East Side Story, Brentwood, a lot of memories of that. You know what I mean? The Notations, I'm Still Here. The Temptations, the Temporees, the Mad Lads. A lot of the lowrider stuff, and then once I went to the joint, that's a lot of the stations in the Central Coast, or down south or up north, played a lot of the old school. It's when I found out about the old school things, man. SOS Band,
band.
You know what I mean? A lot of that stuff, man. You know what I mean? Tell Me If You Still Care. You know, I had a mini truck for about a hot minute. You know what I mean, when it was cool, and two 15s in the back. And you know, I mean, anytime I wanted to pull the females, man, it was either Key Sweat, you know, at the end of the night, going through the neighborhoods, or like I said, Cinco de Mayo, all these festivals, you know, the music in the park was popular when I got out, you know, in the 2000s. And I used to go down over there a lot, man, and, you know, and get my drink on, see who I would see, you know, and then when the gang task force would fucking pull up, I'd be like, see ya. I get a bunch of numbers and do what I had to do. And then, you know, the ego back then when I was younger, I was all freshly tattooed up, you know what I mean? Indoctrinated, this and that. And me and another homeboy from Salas would just, goes, man, I want to go down Santa Clara Street too. I said, let's go. And it'd be bumper to bumper. And we'd be walking towards the Shark Tank instead of the other way, because a lot of the females would get off Highway 87. And once it got past 10, 11 o'clock, you know, great minds things like Flacco thought the same way, and so did me and homeboys. Like, you know what? All that fighting and putting people in their place, checking people out or out there that aren't supposed to be there, you know, taking care of business, what we had to do and reporting. And then now it's just time to have fun and get laid. You know what I mean? This is obviously, this is when Alicia and I were just friends, and he was doing her thing. So I avoided wherever she was. And then that's all it took. You see a car full of girls in Monte Carlo, and, you know, that's why all my kids' mamas, they're not from San Jose. Salinas, Gilroy, Monterey County, Central Valley. You know what I mean? It just, you meet people, man, and that's what it was, man. You know, you drink, you get your dig on. You know what I mean? The fighting and stuff like that. I did the opposite. I did that during the day, got aggressive during the day, and at the nighttime, the girls would all be there. I told you, know, just relax, kick back, calm down, and here, call me later. You know, we'll pick you up over here. You know, the homeboy would wink at me, and I'd just shake my head like, you know, it's on. You know what I mean? That was the whole point. You know, I did enough time, was around the homies and did what I had to do. So anytime I got out, you know what I mean? It wasn't about being a player or anything else like that. You know what I mean? It was just about, you know, having a good time and making those memories. You know what I mean? And a lot of those songs and those stuff that I mentioned, man, you know what I mean, will forever be, you know, as good memories. Nothing ever bad came from any of that stuff. So those are good questions, man. So
I got something to ask you this, right? Before we close this up. So I remember when I got out in 2001, okay, I was working with the regiment. My regiment commander was Robert Chico Rose from Salinas, right? He goes, hey, you know, you're not going to go. He's not on parole no more, but I am. He goes, hey, you know,
we add to that. If I wouldn't have got violated, guess who I was told to report to?
Chico?
I got out in 2000, but when you got out in 2001, I was doing a year.
Okay. So check this out. So he goes, you're gonna go out there? I go, oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because me and him afterwards, me and him went to the fairgrounds together. That's a story I could tell, man, but that's a little me and him got a little, it was crazy. Yeah. Anyways, so I go, I don't know. Maybe for a little bit, maybe, you know what I mean? So next thing you know, all the homeboys from fucking my hood, from VMLs, BMN, we're like all want to go out there together and shit. Now I'm not supposed to be like in the mix like that, but we pull up like 5 cars. We're like about 23 deep. Hell of the youngsters are wearing red, you know what I mean? And they're like, you know, 19, 20. So I'm walking, right? And you know what? How Emma's has that outside area?
Yeah.
Guess who's right there with this lady like this? Fucking Chico. You know what I mean? I think I even had red on too, bro. You know what I mean? He's like, he looked at me.
At the outside, at the bottom?
Yeah, he looked at me and he was like, because I trust you, Flacco. I'm all right, bro. Have a good one. You know what I mean? So we kind of looked. I don't think he was really supposed to be out there either, but man, it was funny though, man. I got arrested too on Cinco de Mayo out there too before. That was fucking funny too. Anyways, guys, this is part 1 for Q&A. We're gonna do more of these from time to time, as well as premiere contents, interviews, and so forth, man. But you guys have been asking for this. We want to get it out. We're not trying to do any exclusives longer than really 40 minutes because a lot of you guys have limited watch span. So we're kind of trying to make this easier for you guys and spread it out. Yeah, so with that said, man, this is your boy Flacco. Toko, got anything to say?
No, man, just appreciate the questions. We still got a lot of questions. We're about halfway through, but like Flacco says, we'll shoot another video, you know, and finish it off and then see how it does. And then again, you know, if you guys want another one, if you guys like it, then we'll do another. Then we'll do a Q&A 3, I guess, since we're doing this
Yeah.
as a
I
two-part.
want some questions outside the gang element though, a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I want some more about real life issues. Weddles World, thank you for those questions. But I want some, that was good. I want some more. I get it. A lot of people are interested about the NR, San Jose, low riding scene, and so forth. That's cool, man. Let's get into some real issues too, though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that was a good question about me being an addict and having my vices and the things that I turn to. Questions like that on a personal level after all that stuff, you know, how Flacco and I dealt with, you know, walking away from all that. What we do now, families entering back into that, you know,
it's still hard, bro. I'm gonna tell you guys right now.
He's still trying to
it's still hard, bro. It's still hard for me to acclimate myself as being a normal citizen. Yeah. It's hard. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm doing good, but at the same time, it's difficult. Yeah. I mean, anyways, it's Big Toko. You know what I mean? The Norteño Rock right there. Your boy Flacco. You know what I mean? Hey, ladies out there, man. Hit up Toko. He's we're gonna put a dating app for him. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna promote this. I mean, win a date with Toko. We're gonna have a raffle. What do you ladies think about that? Man, hit one. Hey, hit one if you ladies want that.
Yeah, as long as she could cook, she got all her teeth. It's all good.
Yeah, man. Most definitely though, man. But everybody have a good, safe one. We're gonna tap in with more of this stuff. I'm trying to drop as much good content. I'm gonna be switching up a little bit of things. Toko's gonna be a part of that as well. You guys have a good one. I'm out. Toko's out.